Yeah, I'm actually a professional technical writer employed by Red Hat, and I started working on Fedora docs kind of in my free time, and now I'm actually paid to do that. So I'm one of the most active people in Fedora docs, which means that if you join the project and if you have any questions or need help with anything, I'm probably your first point of contact, let's say, or your best bet. Now let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, looks like that works. Awesome. So yeah, damn it. So today I'm going to walk you through how Fedora documentation actually works. What we do to make sure that our documentation actually appears on the website, which is a multi-step process. Yeah, here's a list of everything I would like to go through. Now, I know this is a workshop, so the expectation is that you're going to follow along. And basically, we have lots to cover today, so I don't expect anybody to follow through all the way. But what I would like to do is to make sure that anybody can join Matrix, which well, first of all, we're going to create a Fedora account and join Matrix, because that's the first step anybody needs to do to sort of establish communications with us, right? After that, we can talk further on Matrix at any time. It's fine. But without this, we have no way to talk to each other. So, what are Fedora docs? Fedora docs are here. Oh, this is the dark theme, actually. This is the front page of our documentation. It has a bunch of subsections. Part of it is aimed at end users, so people who are using Fedora and maybe they have some sort of a problem, or they just want to know something like what editions are available, that sort of stuff. And there is also project and there is some project documentation as well. This is aimed more at people who are already contributing to Fedora, people who just want to contribute in their free time. And I want to stress that there is no like expectation, right? This is not something that you would have to do, let's say, 4 or 8 hours a week or something like that, right? You can contribute as much as or as little as you want and as you are able. Yeah, we have three basic types of user documentation. User docs, as I said, it's aimed at people who are actually using Fedora. Project docs, that's documentation that describes stuff like, Fedora project has a bunch of different special interest groups, people who are working on separate projects, sub-projects, that kind of stuff. And so they often have a page that just explains what they're actually working on, how to contact them, this sort of stuff. And then there's contributor docs, which is things like packaging guidelines, so all sorts of reference material for people who are working on various aspects of Fedora. So, how do you join? The first thing you need to do is get an account in the Fedora account system. There's a link over there. I'll also paste it in chat. And it's a super straightforward registration process. You just need an email, and on the page you click register over here. Put down your email, certify that you're over 16, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You'll get an email to verify that you're actually a real person. So I would strongly suggest You use an actual real email that you normally use and not a throwaway, because the same email will also be used for stuff like notifications and so on. Of course, you can filter them out uh, if the spam is too much. And yeah, once you have an account here, you'll get access automatically to a bunch of systems that Fedora uses. The most important ones that we're going to talk about today is Matrix, which is a sort of a chat protocol that we use, and Fedora Discussions, which is a forum. So Matrix is best used for more or less real-time communications, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. Here is the Fedora documentation Matrix room right now. So you can see we were just talking about the workshop recently. And there are a bunch of different rooms based on, let's say, subject matter over here, and some private messages as well. The client that I just showed you is called Element, and it's available in, well, not actually Fedora repositories, but as a snap. So if you're on Fedora and you open the software app, you can find it right over here. Right? This thing, you just install it and you're good to go. Once you install it, you go to chat.federaproject.org. That just opens a website in your browser, but that allows you to connect with your FAS account that you just made. And after that, let me show it again. You can go over here, explore rooms, and there's a bunch of rooms available about pretty much anything that's even remotely relevant to Fedora project. So one that I would strongly suggest you join is Fedora documentation, and also Fedora join. Here we go. Join Fedora. This is a room for that's like aimed at newcomers. So if you're completely new to the project, you can just pop in and say hi, and the people in there will help you find, basically show you. They'll show you around, and if you have any issues with FAS or I don't know, setting up your profile, you can just talk to these people. And well, okay, we have Fedora Discussion, which is a standard internet forum. Right, it's a standard discourse forum. You may also hear it referred to as Discord. That's the software that the forum runs on. And documentation in particular has a tag here, which is where our docs discussions take place. Although, as you can see, it's not hugely active at the moment. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of tags, a whole bunch of sections, and you can discuss anything related to the project over here. Now, the difference between Matrix and the forums is that Matrix is better suited for real-time conversation, right? It's a chat, basically. It keeps history, so if you ping somebody and they're not there at the moment, they can just read it later. But for longer-lasting discussions, it's much better to use Fedora Discussion. And finally, Fedora also uses some mailing lists through a system called HyperKitty. That's not very important. In docs, we don't use mailing lists anymore. We used to, but we abandoned it because, well, Fedora Discussion replaces that basically completely. And it was also getting spammed a lot, so it's difficult to administer. Yeah, I'm going to mostly skip this because it's not actually all that important in the beginning, but at some point before you start contributing actual documentation, you will need to generate an SSH key. Uh, it's a pretty simple process. You basically generate a key locally and upload the public part to your FAS, and you may need to do that again in Git Forges, which is a topic that I'll cover a little bit later. So, what's inside a documentation repository? Repository is basically a space that holds a set of documentation sources. The entire docs website is built out of dozens of these repositories, actually 61 or 62 at the moment, and the number keeps increasing. And if I show you in my file explorer, it looks like this. Don't worry, I'll show it again later. There is one central repository that I'll show you just as a bit of an oddity. Don't worry about it. You won't need to deal with this. But here's the configuration file, like the central configuration file that builds the entire website out of multiple repositories. So here's one, here's another, and so on and so on, and it just keeps going like this. And each of these lines that starts with URL is a separate repository. Well, not each one of them. You can see over here that this one's here like 8 times. But yeah, this is pretty much how it works. Now, each repository contains a bunch of config files. So enter.yaml and site.yaml. If you're new, just ignore them and don't touch them because it's extremely unlikely that you will need to actually change anything in those. And if you do, well, just ask in Matrix, please. Now, this one's much more interesting. This is the docs builder. This is what allows you to build a repository locally, which is important because when you make changes, the source files, they're human readable, but they look absolutely nothing like the actual output that will show up on the website later, right? It's an ASCII doc, which is a sort of like if you have an account, for example, on Reddit or really on most modern internet forums, they use a similar sort of markup. I can show you what it actually looks like. Give me a sec. So this is a random file from one of our repositories. Yeah, you can see it doesn't look like anything that's on the website, right? This is just the sources. And during build, the docs builder or our website builder takes these sources and transfers them into an actual HTML that gets put on the site. So yeah, let me actually show you how it works. So I'm currently inside one of our repositories, and I'm going to run the script. And it looks like this. Ignore the errors, that those shouldn't be there, but that's something we're gonna have to fix. And here you get a link to a local preview. And this is what it actually looks like in your browser. So you can see it's a big difference from these sources. Now, inside each repository is one or more modules. That's over here. Most of them only have one default module, which is called root, but there can be multiple. And the actual source files are in pages over here. Now, this is a large repository, QuickDocs, so there are a lot of them. They can also be separated into subdirectories, but that's not typically necessary. That's only useful in very large repositories. It also has a nav file, which, oh wow, yeah, I have this table. Yeah, that's better. This is the navigation file, which it basically like creates the table of contents on the left side of the screen on each page. Now, if you're contributing and you write a new file in Pages and you don't link it over here, it's still going to be built, but it's not going to be easily discoverable, right? It's not going to be in the table of contents. It doesn't get added automatically. So people aren't going to be able to just click it and open it. They will be able to find it through a search engine or something like that. And in my experience, as you're contributing more and more, you just sort of naturally learn the syntax as you go. Right. Okay. I'm going to skip a little bit because I actually covered this. Right. Now, version control, Git. This is the part that scares people the most, but it doesn't really need to. It's a Git can be intimidating, but it's not all that bad, I promise. So what's version control? Normally, when you're writing something like for yourself, let's say some sort of an essay at school or thesis, whatever, you're the only person working on it, and you're just saving it on your local computer or maybe Google Drive or somewhere. But yeah, you're the only person working on it. But even then, you might end up in a situation where you have a bunch of different versions saved at once, right? You've got, thesis number one, thesis final, that sort of thing. And it turns into a complete mess. And it turns into an even bigger mess when there are multiple people involved, because then you have to put together contributions from multiple people, and that's just not very reasonable. So enter Git, or Git is one of the forms of version control that are available. There are multiple, but Git is basically the industry standard, and not just for documentation, but for anything that has anything to do with software. And not just in Fedora, and not just in open source in general, but even in commercial software development, you will probably run into Git. And even if somebody doesn't use Git specifically, they use something that's extremely similar, because Git is just that good. So how does Git avoid this problem with keeping multiple versions of the same file? It creates a history, essentially. And it looks something like this. Now, each of these lines is a commit. And a commit is essentially a state of the repository at a given time. So, for example, if I wanted to roll back this directory to over here, I can just do and now that shows where you currently are. And now this entire directory is in the exact same state it was when this commit was created, right? Now, this allows multiple people to collaborate, and they can do stuff like, make different branches and then merge them back together. Sorry, I've got a sneeze. And it's a really powerful collaboration tool. Now, unfortunately, giving a full tutorial on this would take forever, and I'm not actually good enough at this to do that, or like to explain it properly to everybody. So, yeah, I'm just going to point you to some tutorials a little bit later. And I would like everybody who's interested in contributing to go check them out. And of course, since Git is, as I said, industry standard, there are also a huge number of YouTube videos which can explain everything that's happened, like even from the very start. So I would suggest you go check one of those. Yeah. And now, Fedora's Git repositories are stored in various places. Those are called forges. The most commonly used one is pagure.io, which looks like this. Each of these is a separate repository. So I'm going to click, for example, this one. And if you browse the files, you can once again see here's the build script. Here are the configuration files. Here's the default module. Here's the navigation file that we talked about. And here are the actual contents. Right, so this is Pagure. Almost all of Fedora documentation repos and Fedora repositories in general are on Pagure, which is less than ideal because Pagure has its idiosyncrasies, let's say. It's the most important thing about Pagure that you need to know is that it likes to occasionally go down. And don't worry, it's not just you, it happens to everybody. Just go back and refresh the page and you'll get where you want it eventually. Now, some other Fedora repos are also in GitLab. So for example, these are release notes. It's only a small fraction of them, and yeah, only a few of them, and we've stopped migrating anymore because, as somebody just pointed out in chat, we are soon migrating everything to Forgio. At least I am told that this is the correct pronunciation. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's not going to happen for at least a few more months, and I will be surprised if we actually manage to switch by the end of the year. Oh, here's a quick glossary. You can think of a Git repo as a directory, basically, and the directory holds your actual sources as well as the entire history, like that log that I was showing you earlier. A fork is something that you're going to need to make. before you start contributing, but it's extremely simple. You just open the repository in Pagure or GitLab or wherever else and click fork, and that's pretty much it. Then you clone your forked repository, which means that's essentially cloning is downloading it locally, so you can actually work on it, make changes. After you make some changes, you'll create a commit or multiple commits, which you can then submit, basically, as a pull request. Checking out refers to setting the state of the repo to a specified branch or commit. So like the moving back in history that I showed earlier. Yeah, branches are useful for when you're working on a contribution that may take a little bit longer. Like that's not completely trivial. You create a separate branch so you can work outside the main one without them interfering until you're finished. And after you're finished, you'll merge them together, or rather, you'll create a merge request. Pulling means downloading commits from a repository that's somewhere on the internet, like in Pagure or GitLab, to your local clone. And pushing is the opposite, right? You make some changes in your local clone and you push them back into the, we call it upstream repo. So the one that's on Pagure or GitLab. Yeah, and now here are a couple of links to Git tutorials. This is the official documentation, and they have a quick text-based tutorial over there, as well as a little bit more hands-on one that will ask you to actually download a zip file and extract it somewhere. And the zip file contains a local repository that you can then manipulate as you want without there being any danger of, doing something that you don't want to do. Yeah, and there are tons of tutorials and YouTube videos. So just put Git tutorial into Google or YouTube and go crazy. So now I'm going to walk you through the actual contribution process. This is a sort of an overview. First, you need to find out something to actually do. Make a fork of the repository that you want to do it in. Clone it, set it up, make your changes, and submit a PR. So how do you find somewhere to contribute? Each repository on Pagure, GitLab, or in the future on Forge.io has an issue tracker. So I'll show you the one for QuickDocs. Right? These are open issues, as you can see over here. Some of them are tagged as good first issue, and some of them are even assigned to Cornelius already. If you click that tag, it will filter just the ones with that tag. Yeah, and yeah, so let's click one of these. Here's some description that tells you what is wrong. And you basically go through these, and if you see something that interests you or that you know how to fix, you can, okay, let's show this one actually. Right, so let's assume you want to fix this one. You go over here and assign it to yourself. So I'm gonna do here an update. And this is important because it shows other people that somebody is already working on it, right? So it avoids a situation where two people submit patches for the same thing, which is always unpleasant because we have to refuse one of them. Now, if you remember at the start of the talk, I was showing you that huge configuration file that has 60 different repositories. Each one of those has its own issue tracker. But however, QuickDocs is the repository that I would recommend starting in because one, it has a lot of open issues in it, so there's a lot of stuff to choose from, and it has basically the most traffic, right? So it has the most, let's say, eyes on it. Another way to find something to do is when you're simply you're browsing our documentation on, let's say, you go to CoreOS documentation and you notice that something is wrong. Like, for example, let's say this sentence is wrong. Now, what to do? Well, on each page of Fedora documentation, there are these three icons, and those are automatically generated links to the repository from which that particular page has been built, which helps you avoid dealing with that whole huge configuration file. And so you don't have to guess which one of those 60 repos this is actually in, right? You just click over here. Let's say edit this page. Oh, shut up. Okay, let's try it somewhere else. And you get directly into the file. This is okay. This is in GitLab actually, not Pagure, but in Pagure it works pretty much exactly the same. This is the web editor, so when you're logged in, you can use this. But I would like to caution you against this unless you're fixing something extremely tiny, like a single typo, right? This is fine for a typo fix, but anything else, just open it in a local editor. But even then, it shows you which exact file this is in, except, well, the box is a little bit small, but yeah. So you can see over here that you're in the Fedora docs home repository, and the file name is modules root pages getting started.adoc. So you can open that in your local editor, make the changes that you want, and continue. Yeah, and also, if you happen to notice something that's wrong and you either can't fix it immediately or you want to fix it, but it's going to take you a little bit of time because it's something more complicated than a typo or a broken link or something like that, it's generally a good idea to file an issue for it, by which I mean, again, in the issue, well, actually, this bug, the bug, this button, the bug, if you click it, it again takes you straight into the repository, but into the issue tracker. It even pre-fills the title for you. So you just add a description that explains what's actually wrong on the page, blah, 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 and click create issue. And it's going to keep it on file either for somebody else to fix it, or even as a reminder for yourself. You can also immediately assign yourself to it as you're creating it, in case you want to actually work on it. So the first time you're working on a repository, you need to create a fork. The reason is that the repositories are locked down for most people. You can't push directly into them. The reason for that is that, well, it's generally bad practice to allow absolutely anybody to push into a repo, because there are some, Git is very resilient, but there are still some ways to screw up the entire repository. And so locking it down prevents people from doing it either accidentally or even on purpose, like some malicious actors. But if you create your fork, well, the fork is just yours, right? It's exactly the same as the original repository, or the upstream as we call it, but it's in your own space, and you have full rights to it. You can do anything you want with it, delete it, force push into it, anything you want. So let me show you. Now, I already have this repository cloned. I have all of them cloned. But if I did, sorry, I have it forked, is what I wanted to say. So if I did not, this button over here would just say fork. If I click it, it's going to work for a while and then redirect me to my fork, which looks like this, right? You can see that it's in my own space instead of being in Fedora Linux. So now I have a fork, but it's still only on Peggy, right? It's not on my local hard drive, so I can't edit it with a local editor. So I need to clone it. And if you open this, there are two links to clone. For your fork, you want to use the SSH, because that's what allows you to actually push into it, right? The HTTPS version only allows you to pull, so to download from upstream to your local clone. But this allows you to push as well, so upload your local changes back to Peggy. So let me actually... So I created an empty repository over here, and I'm going to clone my fork. Wait for the terminal. Right, here we go. And now you can see that it's downloaded locally. And these are the contents of the repository, as I showed you before. And I can make my own changes. And yeah. Another thing that you need to do before you start is, because the thing is with your fork is that it's not updated automatically. When the original repository changes, like somebody pushes more and more commits into it, your fork doesn't get those. You have to put them in there automatically, which means you first have to pull them from the original, from the upstream, and then push them into your fork, right? Which means you have to add the original at first. So here's my fork again on Peggy, as I was showing before. I'm going to click View Upstream. And this is the original again. And I'm going to take the HTTPS because I don't need to, or I don't even want to push into the original repo. I just want to pull from it to download their changes, right? So I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna do And this added another remote repository to my local clone. I called it upstream. You can call it anything you want. I just keep this naming convention for every repository that I use because I have a lot of them. And keeping this unified helps you, remembering what you actually want to do. This is the local configuration file. This is the original repo, as in my fork. And this is the upstream that I just added. Now, yeah, I'm pretty sure the repositories are not in sync right now. So I'm going to pull from upstream, which is the original repo. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so now I pulled, and you can see that my fork was behind the upstream repository. So it pulled a bunch of commits. And now I'm going to push them into my fork. And there we go. Wow, I was actually 37 commits behind. Whew. Okay, so this is very important because if you don't do this once in a while, or ideally before you start working on anything, you will end up behind, and you will likely encounter some absolutely massive merge conflict that I don't want to go into this too much, but this is one of the reasons why people are intimidated by Git, right? There are ways to end up in massive problems. So you have to maintain sort of a discipline and make sure to pull before you start working on anything at all. But anyway, don't worry about this stuff too much right now. This is all explained in tutorials, and we can also help you if you show up in Matrix, right? That's or on Fedora discussion. Like that's the most important part, and the stuff that I'm showing you now is just a showcase essentially. So yeah, now that you have your fork and you have it cloned locally, you can open your editor and change whatever you need it, and you save it. And actually, I'm just going to yeah, okay, so I just added a line of text. It's nonsense, but don't worry about it. It's just an example. And now, yeah. Oh, if I run git status, I can see that I have changed this file. So let's pretend for a second that the changes I made aren't nonsense, but are actually useful. And I'm going to add there, and I'm going to commit them. And I'm going to write a message. And actually, okay, I'm showing you a bad example. Let's say I fixed issue number 905. And this has created a new commit with a message that I fixed issue 905 and what the fix actually was. Now, this is quite important your commit messages should be descriptive. And if they're fixing an issue, mention it by number in the commit. If they're not fixing an existing issue, just explain in a single sentence what you did, right? The worst thing you can do is this kind of stuff, or even worse, this kind of stuff. Don't do this, please. Be descriptive, because otherwise, we have this huge log, and if it contains a bunch of entries that are just like nonsense or extremely generic, it's extremely difficult to make any sense of it, and it becomes pretty much useless. Okay, well, you can see over here that I have a local commit. Origin main is my fork, and this is my local stuff. Where the head is what you're actually looking at the moment. So, yeah, write a reasonable commit message, reference number, issue number if it's an issue, and now we're going to push it. And it doesn't want to let me. Okay, well, I'm not going to go troubleshooting this because we're already, it's already getting pretty late. But essentially the idea is you push to your fork, and then you open a so-called pull request. Now, a pull request is basically you're requesting somebody to take the changes from your fork and to push them into the main repository that's actually published on the site, right? It's also commonly called a merge request. It's the same thing, it's just different terminology. When you push new commits to your fork, it right, wrong one. Let's give it a sec. Yeah, okay, awesome. So I managed to push to my fork, and now it gave me a link to create a pull request. So I'm going to open that. And you can see this is the change that I made. Yeah, it's nonsense. It's just for a test. And this is the important part. It's when you're creating a pull request, please make sure to check the origin repository, the origin branch. I created a new branch called test just now, and the target branch. It will be correct by default almost always, but check it anyway. The PR title is automatically taken from your commit message, so assuming you wrote a reasonably descriptive one, you don't need to edit that. Describe your changes. You can leave this blank unless it's something that's really big. In that case, you should probably drop a paragraph about what you've actually done, and then you click Create Pull Request. And here it is. Now, I have admin rights to the repository, so I can actually see this. You won't be able to see this, I'm pretty sure. And I could merge this if I wanted. I'm not going to actually do it because, well, it's nonsense. So we don't want that in the repository. But if I click this, it's going to merge to the main in the upstream repository. And after that, it's going to be published on the website. Yeah, this is basically what we've just talked about. You submit your PR and it ends up in the repository in, actually, let me show you. Over here in pull request, which is similar to the issue tracker that I was showing you earlier, we currently have 3 of those. Oh, interesting. And somebody with the correct permissions needs to merge this, which will typically be me, or maybe Peter Boy or somebody else. There are not a lot of people who have the permissions to do this, right? For the same reasons why you can't push directly into the upstream, into the original repository. It's to prevent abuse, and we basically give these access rights to people who have been long-term contributors and who have demonstrated that they have good intentions, essentially. And it's not really like the direct access to pushing or to merging is not something you really need anyway. If when you open a pull request or a merge request, me or somebody else should get to it in a few days and review it and either say, okay, awesome, I'm merging this, or they'll add a comment saying that, hey, I spotted this little problem over here, can you please fix that? If that's the case, then you can just make more changes on your local clone and push it into the same branch of your fork, and the pull request will automatically update, right? And after everything's fixed, it gets merged, and after that happens, within about an hour, your changes show up on the docs website. Oh, hey, Hank. Okay, I'm just really quickly going to give you some writing tips. The big thing to understand is that nobody wants to read documentation, right? In fact, people go to great lengths to avoid doing it. Now, that doesn't mean documentation isn't important, right? But it's simply not something that people want to do. Ideally, people want their software to just work and read their minds and do exactly what they want. And failing that, because software doesn't actually do that, they want to, if they have a problem, they want to find something that tells them exactly what to do. And they don't want to read anything else, just a bunch of commands that they should run and it fixes all of their problems. So get to the point, use simple language, because keep in mind that people using your documentation, well, we write everything in English, and it's used by a lot of people who have English as their second or third or fourth language. Even probably pretty much anybody in this meeting is an ESL speaker, right? So keep it simple, because complicated language just might be beyond their skills. Linking to existing content is super important, right? So you're documenting something where a part of a procedure is already documented somewhere else. Just link there. Don't rewrite the whole thing again, right? Because if you rewrite it, it's extra work and it's extra maintenance. Like if the procedure changes, you have to fix it in multiple places, and then nobody remembers that it even is in multiple places. So you end up with 2 different ones, and it's just a mess. If it already exists, just link to it, right? And empathy, a lot of people misunderstand what that is. Empathy is the ability to understand how other people think, right? It's not, it doesn't necessarily mean that you approve, but it means you understand. In this case, it means the ability to understand how people might get confused. So you're documenting something and you notice that, oh, this command is kind of ambiguous. Just add an info box or something pointing it out and explaining what the right command is. Yeah, and we have a style guide under this link as part of our contributor documentation. And of course, if you have any questions, I don't mean just right now at the workshop, but in general, you're just working on a PR or something and something is not clear to you, go on Matrix or the forums and ask. Somebody should probably reply to you. Should probably reply to you. Yeah, I would also recommend that everybody check out this link. Again, it's our docs, and it explains how to join not just Fedora docs specifically, but any part of the Fedora project. So, for example, if any of you have are interested in graphics or in design, there's a design team and that sort of stuff. And yeah, we already covered this. This is the Fedora join room on Matrix. This link actually tells you to join this anyway, and yeah, you really should go over there. And that's it. Whew. All right, thank you everybody for listening. If there are any questions, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen right now and check them out. And otherwise, Cornelius, you have the mic.
Wow, that was detailed. Thank you, Peter, for that. I think, Peter Boy, if you have anything to say, I'll give the mic to you. Say something.
Yes. Okay. I want to add that we have step-by-step guides in our documentation. If I can share my screen, I could show you where to get it. Is it possible?
Yeah.
Oh, fine. Okay, you're on the docs homepage. There you have the user documentation, and beyond that we have the Mindshare teams. You can go there, and we have a documentation. There's a team documentations team documentation, and there you can find contribute to improve and expand docs. And there we have contribution tools, and there you will find how to create and use a local Fedora authoring environment. That is what Peter talked about. And you can see here a step-by-step guide how you should proceed to get it done. It's one guide which is helpful. We have another one too. If we go back to the documentation, we have also engineering teams, and we have a server. And there we have another step-by-step guide working in a local authoring environment. It's a bit shorter probably, and it proved to be helpful at least for my colleagues of the server working group. And these specific guides may be more helpful for doing the concrete work than the general YouTube videos or so. Okay, that's just as information from me.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess the stage is now mine. I would like to share my screen, just a minute. So, thank you for the talks, the speakers. Um, I'll tell you about myself. I'm Cornelius. I've been contributing to open source projects for the past 2 years now. I'm an outreach intern working with the DEI team, and my mentor is Yona. She's here with us here today. So, if you want to learn more about the outreach, you can always reach out to me in the Matrix room, and maybe I'll share. You can always check out their website, their official document, their official website, and also look, in case you need any advice on how to apply, you can always reach out to me. So I think we are focusing on documentation today, and Peter said a lot about how you can contribute to any documentation that any repository that you'd like to contribute to. If you find an issue, maybe you're browsing a specific documentation and you're upgrading your files and you find a typo, maybe even a wrong command, you can always file an issue and always check the issue tracker. Again, if you need to create your first pull request, or maybe if you are seasonal contributor. So the steps are pretty easy. So you fork your own you fork the original repository, and then you clone it. Yes, we love to check it here. So I'll show you a quick one using the Fedora Quick Docs. So if you haven't forked the repo, so you can see the fork. If I go to my profile, I can see the forked repositories here. Yeah, so the quick docs here, and that's the first step that you have to do if you need to make. So before then, I'll need to find an issue that I'm going to work on. So just a minute. Yeah, so here, so I found this issue here. It'll be pretty easy for me to work on it, and you can see that all the information here. So upgrading Fedora Linux using DNF system plugin. So in the root pages and upgrading file, you can, this is just a clarification that if you are upgrading your system, you need to, if you're using the package version 4, you have to use this command. And if you're using version 5, I guess for Fedora 41 plus, the default is DNF version 5. So you can try this one. Yeah, so the next thing is you have to clone it. I'm using SSH because I'll also try to push it to my origin repository. Hope you can see my, well, I already cloned it, but the command is pretty easy. You just git clone and then you paste the command, the link, and then it's download it now. So you can see that we have different files here. And for us, we are going to check the upgrading Fedora offline file. So let's check the docs here. Yes. Yeah. So we have quick docs here. Well, I don't know where that is, but we can look it up here. This section. Wait. Yeah. It's loading. Okay. Yeah. You can see the upgrading Fedora offline name there. So if we go down, we can find this is the part we need to update. I already have the correction, so that is but before I make any change, I need to create a different branch. The name of the branch, maybe fix, and grade instructions. So I'm currently in my fix upgrade instruction branch. So I'm now ready to make any change here and push to my forked repository, the original repository, not the original, but the origin repository, not the upstream. Yeah. Here. So this is the part that we need to change and clarify that we are using, if you are using the version 4 of the DNF. So already have that one. So if you want to view it, I don't know how to run it locally, but I'll get to know that later. So here I made a few changes. So if you're using the DNF version 4, which is the default for the older versions of the Fedora releases, and if you're using version 5, you have to use these commands. That's it for that. This is ASCII, so this is the syntax here. You'll get to learn that maybe later. So from this part to this part. Yep. Now what? Yes, the next step is committing my changes. I'll add them. Commit. I'm using dot to add all the changes, but if you need to add a specific file, you can specify the name. But since we have one, let's go with all. Then git commit. Maybe update DNF instructions. Now I'm ready to push my changes to my forked repository. Yep, git push. So the setup stream, I'm making this my default remote branch. So anytime I'm trying to push it again, I will just git push origin to my forked branch. Then That was this one. Yeah. So if we check, yep. So I pushed my changes to my forked repository here. So and anytime I want to make, so it's now ready for me to create a pull request here. So you can see the different branches that I have. So we have this one that we recently pushed. So be sure to check which branch you're pushing. So then, yep, we have the title. You're pushing it to the main. Yes, we have one branch here. Yep, give it a title. You click the button here so you can see the changes that I've made there. Here. One commit. You have my branch there. So if you check the pull request here, you have it here. So we can now wait for those maintainers like Peter. We all contributors. So as Peter said, that anyone can contribute, and if you contribute for a long time, you can get permissions to merge other pull requests. Yeah, I think for now all this is ready. Yep. If you have any question, we have our speakers and they will answer your questions.
Peter actually has his hand raised.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, oh, fine. There's one point, if you are editing the QuickDocs documentation, at the top of the file, we have a section about last review and to which Fedora version the documentation refers. And every time when you fix something on in one article, you should at least update the last review date, so we can monitor which documents have for a long time not seen too, for instance. So it is new. It's just for QuickDocs. The other documentation don't have something like that, but for QuickDocs, it's essential.
Okay, thank you for clarification. So I guess the floor is open for questions. If you have any questions, you can type in the chat, or if you can speak, you can raise the hand. We have a question here. Yes, Peter will answer this. What technical knowledge do we know? Do we need to know in order to contribute?
But I can say something. There is no specific technical knowledge. It's as important as is technical knowledge is your practical experience. So when you see there is a description which doesn't work, but you have found somehow how to do it, please fix it according to your experiences. And Yes, that's the issue. It's not only about technical experts or something like that. It is also share your experiences. That's one of the of the big goals, the big intentions of the Fedora documentation.
Yeah, if I may add, there's no limit, upper or lower, really. The documentation that you're writing doesn't have to be extremely technical at all. We are currently missing a lot of documentation for completely new users, right? An increasing amount of people are getting madder and madder about Microsoft and what they're doing to Windows, so they're taking the plunge and installing Linux, and a lot of them are ending up in Fedora, and they're completely new. They don't know anything. They don't even know what a package manager is. So we need docs for people like this, right? Like, okay, I just installed Fedora for the first time. What do I do now? Where's the browser? I don't see Chrome. How do I install Chrome? That kind of stuff, right? And like, if you're in the same shoes and you're completely new, you can just make notes and document your own learning process and then essentially share it with others, right? All of us were new at some point, except for some of us that was a really, really long time ago.
Well, I don't know. I'm online here.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
hear you
okay.
now.
There was a question whether the docs are monitored or not. We tried to monitor the docs some times ago, but without much success, so to speak. So we try, but we have to establish a process to monitor docs and to discuss which topics seem to be most relevant. But that's a future project. At the moment, we don't.
Okay, yeah, that's better. We do have Google Analytics on the site, so that gives us a basic idea what's the most commonly accessed docs, but it's not particularly granular. I can tell you, Benson, that the most commonly accessed docs over the last few years were QuickDocs, the repository that me and Cornelius were showing you earlier. And in particular, there's always a spike every 6 months for upgrade documentation, right? Every 6 months, there's a new Fedora version, and every time we get a massive spike because people are looking to upgrade and they can't remember the commands. So that's the most common docs. And Malika, you said, and somebody else as well, how can you contribute in code side? This is beyond the scope of this workshop, but I would suggest you get on Matrix and go to the Fedora join room that I was talking about earlier, and ask over there, and they can point you in the right way. There's always work to do for developers, as well as quality engineering, packaging, that kind of stuff. So yeah, join Fedora join and ask over there.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. I was asking, how does someone move past the documentation contribution which has been covered in the forum? For example, contribute to the kernel itself, the Fedora operating system itself.
Well, Fedora operating. You mean like documentation that's installed with Fedora locally?
Not documentation itself, but I mean, for example, for a kernel engineer to work on Fedora, the operating system.
Right. Yeah, that's the same answer I gave to Malika, basically. Go on Matrix, or first get a FAS account, go on Matrix, and then ask in Fedora join. And like that entire group exists to help people sort it, to point people to whatever they're interested in on Fedora project, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Do Fedora docs only cover installation tips and guides, or what is their scope? Not really. And funnily enough, we are actually currently missing an installation guide. We used to have one. I rewrote it from scratch a long time ago, like a decade ago. And at this point, it's so hopelessly outdated. Plus, this release, Fedora, at least on Workstation, actually got a completely new installer anyway. So we don't publish it anymore. But no, we kind of have a strategy issue with Fedora docs at the moment. We don't really have a scope. Like, if you write something that's decent and useful, we'll publish it because we don't have any limits, which is not exactly the best thing, but that's currently how it is. Like, as long as it's Fedora related, of course, and the closer it's related to the actual, let's say, core Fedora project, the better. Like, to explain what I mean by that, a lot of Fedora users want to, for example, play games, which means they want to install Steam and run Windows native games through Proton, right? And this is definitely useful documentation for Fedora users, but at the same time, it's pretty far removed from the actual Fedora project, right? But it's still documentation that the sort of thing that we accept. And we have some gaming docs actually maintained by the gaming SIG, special interest group. But yeah, the scope is as long as you can justify it being related to Fedora in some way, that's the scope.
Probably an addition from me. I don't know. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Regarding installation guide, indeed we don't have one installation guide, but we have 6 or 7 installation guides. Currently, we have no unique installation guide how to install Fedora, because we decided some times ago it is impossible to write such a guide. Instead, we have one or more installation guides for each edition, at least. Besides Cloud, we are missing that, but all the other editions do have an installation guide. And we are specifically looking for new users of Fedora to look at the installation guide and to tell us what they are missing and what is hard to understand and so on. That's one edition. The other is we lack specifically minor or small problem solutions. So such things as you find in Linux server or something like that. So we are really interested to have short answers, short guidance for minor, small, little problems, so to speak.
A question from Hannah. What happens if a package no longer meets its open source criteria? Yeah, that's a problem. Fedora has a very well-defined policy about open source licenses, and there are a bunch of different licenses, and not all of them are, let's say, true open source or true free software. And we actually have a whole section on the docs site. I pasted a link to chat, so you can read through that. And what happens if a package, let's say, changes its licensing terms and is no longer fits the criteria? Well, in that case, it gets removed from Fedora repositories. It's something that happens very rarely, because in general, open source project very rarely changing licenses, but it has happened before. And a question from Khalid. What's the biggest challenges facing Fedora docs? And how do you get to decide what gets published and what doesn't? The biggest challenge right now is our lack of focused strategy. We were actually, me and Peter Boy had a talk mostly about this exact topic at Flock. That was 2 weeks ago. You know, that big conference that Iona was showing you that boat picture from. Yeah, we were. So we were discussing this, and we really need to get together and come up with an actual strategy. To illustrate what I mean by that, at the talk after it, we got a question from Aoife Moloney, who is the Fedora project people wrangler, I suppose, and she asked, like, if you suddenly had 20 people come in and say they want to contribute, what would you do? And Peter answered her that that's exactly the wrong question to ask, because the truth is that if we had 20 people come in and ask what to do, we wouldn't really know what to tell them, because we don't actually know ourselves, right? Because we don't have a strategy. So that's the biggest issue that we're currently facing. We need to develop some sort of a like very specific, well-defined framework for what we actually want Fedora documentation to be. And in the meantime, well, that ties into the other half of your question. How do you decide what gets published and what doesn't? We're currently publishing pretty much anything as long as it's accurate and like decently high quality, and as long as it's, you know, correct, and of course at least tangentially related to Fedora.
Well, just in addition.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Indeed, if we if we would be asked what to do, we have to scratch our head. Mea culpa. It's partly due to my lack of resources to write a strategy paper I announced probably some months ago. But I can announce we will have a change of that in about 2 or 3 months. I had a long discussion with Justin, but I didn't manage to discuss it with Peter. So now, I don't want to tell it at the moment much about it, but I'm sure you can expect in 2 or 3 months latest there is a change. We will have a strategy and we will have a lot of support for it.
Also, another question from Khalid: does the documentation cover all flavors of Fedora, like XFCE and others? Kinda. It's a little bit complicated because there are different ways that you could split Fedora flavors, let's say, right? So you've got spins, which are to a heavy degree all the same, except with a different default environment. And most of the documentation applies to all of them by default, because they just look different, but underneath they're all the same. And then you have different Fedora editions like CoreOS and IoT, Atomic, that got renamed to something else. I can't remember what at the moment. And Silverblue, that kind of stuff. And those are fundamentally different. Like, some of them are container-based, some of them only work on certain computer architectures. Or soon we'll have documentation for Fedora boot C, for example, which is bootable containers, right? Which is widely different from normal Fedora workstation that you would use on your home computer. And those additions tends to have their own separate documentation. You can actually see that on the front page. Right, there are separate sections for Fedora Server, CoreOS, IoT, Atomic Desktops, Workstation, Spins and Labs, and that kind of stuff. And this edition-specific documentation is usually managed by the same team that actually maintains that edition, as in the software.
Yeah, but that's also true for the spins. So, for example, we have an XFCE spin, and we have a placeholder for documentation for them. I don't know at the moment if concrete this one has documentation, but they can have, and we have a place for that in our documentation structure. But you should contact people which are maintaining the XFCE spin. These are the people who own the documentation about XFCE, so to speak.
So if we don't have any more questions for the moment, I want to take a few minutes to say thank you to everyone that joined us. Thanks a lot, Cornelius, for organizing it, and thanks a lot to Peters, both of you, for joining and sharing all the great things that the Fedora Docs team is doing. Personally, I learned quite a lot of things, and it's really nice because I think it's a great way to contribute and do a few things in the Fedora community. And definitely, like, without documentation, and I say also to Cornelius when we are working together on the outreach, it's so important because it's much easier also for new people to join on board when we have good documentation. So the form, and again, thanks everyone for joining.